for those of you who don't know who I am and who are wondering about the accent, yes, I am Australian. I've lived in London for 20 years now, but I'm originally a Melbourne girl. Let's get that out of the way. I spent 28 years having what I would call a corporate career. So I worked in marketing strategy, customer innovation, customer development, and I worked across lots of industries. But when I left to start my own business and started my own business in 2019, ostensibly to build what I call the Kym-shaped box, all of a sudden I realized how critical and how valuable having an authentic and effective personal brand is, regardless of whether you work for a branded company or you're connected with an organization. A lot of us don't think of ourselves as a personal brand. So what I want to talk about today is actually how that's transpired through my career, give you some thoughts on that. And I invite you to just think about where you are in terms of thinking about yourself as a personal brand. Could you be more intentional? And how are you using it to really make the impact and make the decisions and perhaps the ethical choices that you make both in your career and your life? So I'll give you that to think about. I also, from a non-corporate point of view, I was a governor for 4 years for a secondary college in North London. So I love contributing to really unlocking young people. And then I have been 3 years as a contributor for a global leadership initiative called Homeward Bound. And this year have stepped into the lead faculty role. And that's a program of 110 women every cohort. We're at the 8th cohort that take on this leadership initiative to change and shape the future of our planet. So I'm up for big things. So my personal brand's important as a tool for that. So let me start by, let's just talking about what our brand actually is. So we might think we have a brand or a reputation, but our brand actually exists in the world of others. And more often than not, we only think about our brand inside our head, but it actually exists in how you show up for others, how others experience you consistently, frequently, and over time. And that over time piece is really important. We all know in the marketing and sales game that it's about showing up to build the rapport, the relationship, and the trust and familiarity that allows people to step in and buy our ideas, our products, our services, our beliefs, our causes, our organizations. So we're actually building the ability and the space for people to buy into us. And that's why having your personal brand is your most valuable asset. And we need to be more conscious and intentional about, one, how we look after it, and two, how we deploy it, how we use it. So when we align the conversation in our head that's going on in our head about who we are with how we show up externally, that's when our brand turns up to others as authentic and impactful. There's a lot of talk about authenticity and a lot of struggle with personal branding about, I don't want to be inauthentic to myself. I don't want to just be a brand that's plastered on. So that might be something you want to explore a little bit later on. How do you build an authentic personal brand that is just you? And that has the impact on others that you want to have. You want them to buy into your ideas, your cause, your way of shaping the world. You know, we talk a lot about that ethics and the choices we make at MarketingKind. So, you know, you've showed up here today. That's part of your, you know, you're all making decisions and opinions and judgments about me right now. We are opinion and judgment making machines. So make no mistake about it. That's what being a personal brand is all about. But when you build that authenticity and understand that psychology, it becomes a choice of lots of small things. So let me explain why. So some of you might be old enough to have read Brian Tracy's Psychology of Selling. So he published that in 2005, and it was a real Bible for me. Because while I was doing a lot of marketing and strategy work, I was also working really closely with big account management teams, with big national accounts, and with big players. So what I needed to understand was how to sell ideas, how to develop new business for the organization. And Tracy actually talks about 5 to 7 touch points that we need to have with the buyers in our lives, in our businesses, before we've created the space to ask for the sale, whatever that sale is, whether it's a connection, whether it's to come on a board, whether it's to actually buy something, donate something. So 5 to 7. Now, more recent research with the advent of digital media says that is sitting now at around 10. So that's 10 touch points to develop the kind of rapport, relationship space for people to step in and potentially buy our ideas and buy what we're about. So when we think about this, it's about every contact leaves a trace. We do that anyway as people, everywhere. It's a secret. You're already a brand. You already are. You just might not have ever thought about yourself in that way. This is how you show up all the time. Every contact leaves a trace. So just think about all those crime dramas you see on television, CSI, all of that sort of thing. It's about getting forensic about your personal brand, and it's in this way. It's not a new idea. The principle of exchange, or every contact leaves a trace, was first touted in the late 1800s by a forensic scientist by the name of Dr. Edmund Locard. Now, back at that time, forensics didn't exist. But Dr. Locard was working in Lyon in France in the late 1800s, and he was interested in how we actually track down perpetrators of crimes. So one of the things that he actually developed was the 12-point test on a fingerprint that actually allows us to identify anyone anywhere in the world. So really fascinating guy. But what he was looking at was when a perpetrator entered a crime scene, they left a trace of themselves. Every contact leaves a trace. But there's something else that happens. When they leave the crime scene, they take a piece of the crime scene with them. Again, every contact leaves a trace. So when we're thinking about our personal brand, what we're thinking about is not just the impact we have, but the exchange we make. This is a two-way thing. We are building a bridge when we're asking people to step into our space. And our personal brand is what allows us to do that. And being aware of where others are at is key in that. So when we relate that to personal branding, so let's have a think about, what we're doing today. What's the trace? What's the exchange we're making here today? So it might be our listening, our information, our attention, our input, our conversation. So all of those are traces we're leaving on each other today. You're leaving that trace, that impact on me. And I will be leaving some sort of impact on you. And it may be different for every single one of you. There may be some similarities, but you're sitting there making decisions. Your brain is making decisions about what's congruent, what's interesting, what's not interesting, what you're going to throw away, what you're going to keep. It's doing that all the time. So it's being aware of how we can show up in all these small ways. How do we build a personal brand that's based on that every contact leaves a trace? How are we congruent? How are we being intentional when we go out to ask for people to contribute, when we ask for people to donate, when we make our own choices about how we live our lives? If we're passionate about a cause, how are we a role model or a walking example of everything that cause represents? How do we do that? Because that's the way we create our biggest impact. There's what we say, but it's actually how we show up to others and being really conscious about that. Now, I'm not saying it has to consume you. It's small things. This is building a muscle. I've been doing this for a long, long time. So, you know, I speak about it quite easily, and it's always something I'm thinking about. But, you know, we all get unintentional. We all do things that are not congruent. And it's about noticing and saying, how could I line that up better so I get to those 10 touch points that we talk about, those 10 traces, so I can have a really powerful conversation about what I want and what I can provide. So I want to leave you with a couple of questions, just in case you don't have anything to say and can't get the conversation going. So how you are showing up also makes you referable. So think about, what would someone who was referring you or referring someone to you say about you? I get, Kym's a coach, Kym does personal branding, Kym's building brand you. That's really, really consistent, because that's how I show up all the time, particularly in my business. What would people say about you? Not in lots and lots of words, but, you know, what box would they put you in? Even though you don't want to be in a box, what box they are putting you in a box. So considering that you are already a brand, how intentional are you really being about aligning how you show up with the impact you want to create? And how responsible do you feel about doing that? You know, it's up to us. We're the master of our personal brand, even though it exists in the world of others. So, you know, how can we take responsibility for building that bridge between ourselves and others so that we can create the impact that we want?